The forest was silent after the battle, but silence in this place was never truly peace. The shadows hung heavy among the trees, curling like smoke around Kale and Alara. Kale leaned against the trunk of a massive oak, exhaustion pulling at his body. His strength, though immense, had limits, even for an alpha. Alara knelt beside him, her hands still glowing faintly from the power she had summoned. The sensation was intoxicating and terrifying. She could feel the echoes of the night, the lingering threads of energy from the attackers, and the pulse of the forest itself. Each heartbeat, each rustle of leaves carried meaning she had never known before. Kale studied her quietly. You are stronger than I imagined," he murmured, his voice rough with fatigue. Even though she could not hear, she felt the weight of his words in his touch, in the gentle brush of his hand along hers. She nodded slightly, unsure of what to say, yet understanding perfectly. "You saved me," Kale added, a hint of awe threading his tone. It should have been the other way around. Ilara's chest tightened. She had always been seen as helpless, fragile, a burden to the world. Yet here she was, standing at the center of power and darkness, her own strength radiating through her. She felt it, the strange and ancient energy that had awakened inside her, a force she was only beginning to understand. "Your power," Kale continued, "it is rare, ancient even. You could change everything, Alara, but you must learn to control it." The words were both promise and warning. Control meant discipline. Discipline meant training. And training would mean facing truths about herself she had never known. For days, Kale guided her. He taught her to feel the world more deeply, to sense not just danger but the emotions and intentions of those around her. Alara learned to focus her energy, to shape it and to use it in ways that went beyond simple defense. Her senses sharpened, blending with Kale's guidance until she felt almost as if she could see the world with her mind. But the quiet was not meant to last. Word of Ilara's presence in the forest reached the nearby human nobles. They saw a blind and deaf girl protected by a vampire of unmatched power, and feared both the girl and the man who guarded her. A plan was formed, cruel and clever. One night, while Kale rested in a trance-like sleep, the humans struck. They came with ropes, traps, and shadows of their own, seeking to capture Alara. But this time, Alara did not wait for Kale. She felt their presence, the tremor of their intent as surely as she had felt the forest. Her hands glowed, faint but powerful, and a ripple of energy flowed outward, bending the shadows around her to her will. Kale stirred as he sensed the intrusion. "Ilara, now?" he whispered into her mind. She nodded firmly, stepping forward, guided by instinct and the power that pulsed through her veins. The humans froze as the shadows shifted, wrapping around them like living walls. Ilara's energy flared, bright and sharp, forcing them to step back. She could feel their fear, their surprise, and even their anger, and she pushed against it, shaping it, bending it, turning it into a barrier. When Kale finally stepped into the fray, he saw something he had never seen before. Ilara, radiant with power, fearless, and commanding the very darkness he had once ruled alone. Together they moved as one, her senses, his strength, their bond turning the tide. The humans fled, broken by fear and the realization that they faced not just a vampire, but a girl who wielded the shadows as her own. After the battle, Kale pulled Ilara close. "You have grown," he said softly, pride and wonder mixing in his tone. "Stronger than anyone I have ever known." Ilara leaned into him, feeling the warmth and steadiness of his presence. For the first time, she understood the depth of their connection. He was not just her guide or protector. He was a part of her world, just as she had become a part of his. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing moment, their bond deepened. Kale taught her about the world beyond the forest, the kingdoms, the politics, the shadows that lay hidden in the hearts of men and vampires alike. And Ilara, in return, brought light to Kale's darkness, showing him that even in centuries of solitude and power, love and trust could grow. One evening, as the moon hung low over the forest, Kale brought Ilara to the edge of the clearing where the river ran silver in the moonlight. "You can feel it, can't you?" he asked, brushing her hair back from her face. She nodded, sensing the cool flow of water, the gentle sway of reeds, and the faint stirring of fish beneath the surface. "You have learned to see the world through your own strength," Kyle said, his hand over hers. "I am proud of you, Ilara, not because you are mine, but because you are yourself." Ilara felt warmth rise within her. For the first time, she believed she belonged somewhere. Not just in the forest, not just beside Kale, but in a world that had always seemed cruel and indifferent. Yet, even in this quiet, peace was fleeting. A subtle shift passed through the forest, a tremor in the shadows that neither Kale nor Ilara could ignore. Something ancient, older than either of them, had sensed the awakening of her power. "It begins," Kyle murmured, his eyes narrowing. "There is more out there than those who came for you before, and it knows we are strong." Ilara felt the pulse of the darkness, not evil but waiting, testing, observing. Her fingers twitched, her energy flaring in response. "I am ready," she said firmly, though her voice was only felt in Kale's mind. Kale smiled faintly, a rare softness in the midst of his formidable presence. "We face it together," he said, pressing his forehead to hers. "Whatever comes, we are one." The night stretched around them, silent but alive. The forest seemed to watch, the stars above twinkling like distant flames, as if the heavens themselves bore witness to the birth of something extraordinary. Ilara's power pulsed, resonating with Kale's, and in that moment they were no longer teacher and student, protector and ward. They were partners, equal in strength and purpose, bound by trust and the unspoken promise of love. And yet, the shadows lingered. Deep in the darkness beyond the forest, something ancient stirred. It had felt the shift, the awakening of power, and it waited, patient and inevitable. A thread of fate, dark and twisting, stretched toward them, promising challenges yet unseen. Kale sensed it first, a cold brush along the edges of his awareness. "The night is not done with us," he said, his voice low and warning. "There is more to come, Ilara, and you will need all that you are to face it." Ilara felt it too. The pull, the tension, the promise of trials that would test her courage, her strength, and her heart. But she did not shrink. She had survived darkness and danger, learned to trust, and found her own power. She would face whatever came with Kale at her side. Together they stood in the moonlit clearing, the forest humming softly around them. The air was thick with anticipation, the sense of something waiting just beyond the edge of perception. And in that quiet, potent moment, Ilara understood the truth she had always longed for, that she was seen, she was heard, and she was not alone. The shadows shifted, faint and deliberate, and the whisper of the ancient force reached her mind, a promise of challenges yet to come. But she did not fear it. With Kale beside her, her hands glowing softly with power, and her heart full of courage, she was ready. The forest waited, and so did the world beyond. And somewhere, deep in the darkness, a faint figure stirred, a reminder that even victory is only the beginning of a story yet to unfold. The village of Liorna was a quiet place, nestled in the folds of rolling hills and dark woods. The sun rarely shone here, and even the birds seemed to move with hesitation. Among the villagers, whispers were a constant hum, for they were quick to judge those who were different. And no one was more different than Ilara. Ilara was blind and deaf. She had known nothing but silence and darkness for as long as she could remember. People often avoided her, sometimes staring with pity, sometimes with fear. Children ran away when she approached, their laughter turning into whispers behind her back. Yet, despite it all, she had a strength the villagers could not see. She felt the world in ways no one else could. She could sense the warmth of sunlight, the chill of approaching storms, and the shifting emotions of those around her. She lived alone in a small, crumbling cottage on the edge of the village, surviving on what little the land provided. She moved with careful steps, guided by memory and intuition. Her world was quiet, but it was hers, and she protected it fiercely. One evening, as the twilight stretched its long fingers across the hills, Ilara felt a pull she had never felt before. It was subtle, almost like a whisper brushing against her mind. She paused, tilting her head, sensing the forest beyond the village calling her. There was danger in its shadows, but there was also something else, something alive, intense and magnetic. Curiosity, stronger than fear, guided her steps. The forest was thick, its trees twisted and gnarled, their branches clawing at the fading light. Ilara's hand brushed along the rough bark, each touch grounding her as she moved deeper. The whispers grew louder, a pulse she could feel through the earth beneath her feet. And then she felt him. Kyle. He was there before she could see or hear him, a presence so strong it pressed against her like the weight of the night itself. He moved silently like a shadow shaped into a man, and when he stepped into the clearing, the moonlight caught the edges of his form. Tall, dark, and commanding, he exuded a power that made the air vibrate. Ilara froze, not in fear but in awe. Kale had seen many humans. He had hunted, commanded, and ruled over shadows for centuries. Yet this girl, blind and deaf though she was, did not flee or tremble. She reached toward him, guided only by the pull of her senses. "Who? Are you?" Kale's voice was deep, velvet dark, though Ilara could not hear it. She felt the weight of it, the emotion behind it, a mixture of curiosity and caution. She inclined her head slightly, acknowledging his presence. Most humans would have been screaming, fleeing into the woods or worse, but she did not run. And in that, Kale saw something he had not seen in a very long time. Courage, pure and unbroken. He circled her slowly, like a predator assessing prey. But there was no hunger in his eyes tonight. Instead, there was intrigue, fascination, and something dangerous, an emotion he had long buried. Longing. "You feel it," Kyle murmured. Again, she could not hear him, but she sensed the rhythm of his intent. A shiver ran through her, not of fear, but of recognition. She understood, in the strange, invisible language of feeling, that he was offering her a choice. When she did not step back, Kale knelt, bringing himself closer to her level. "I can be your eyes," he said, the words a brush of warmth against her mind. "And your voice. I can show you the world you cannot see, speak for what you cannot hear, but you must trust me." Trust was a word heavy with meaning, a word she had never shared with anyone. And yet, in the pull of Kale's presence, in the promise of connection, she felt a flicker of hope. She nodded, slowly, deliberately. "Then follow me," he said. The forest seemed less threatening with him by her side. He guided her hand along smooth rocks, around twisting roots, and through the thick shadows. Through his touch, she began to feel the shape of the world in new ways. The curve of a hill, the stretch of the river, the tremor of approaching creatures she could not see. Kale became her senses, translating the world into a language of touch, warmth, and rhythm. At first, it was overwhelming. Every leaf, every stone, every whisper of wind carried meaning, and her mind struggled to process it all. But Kale was patient. He was gentle in ways that contrasted with the predatory aura he carried. For the first time in her life, she felt safe. Days passed, though they were measured in sensations rather than hours. Kale taught her to navigate, to sense danger, and to understand emotions through subtle shifts in touch and breath. He became her voice when words could not reach her, and slowly an unspoken bond began to form between them. Yet the world outside their forest sanctuary was not kind. Villagers began to notice Ilara's absence and whispered rumors of dark magic. Some feared her, some feared Kale, and some simply wanted to seize her for their own gain. One night, under a sky heavy with stars, Kale sensed a disturbance. Shadows moved differently, carrying a threat he had not felt in decades. A rival vampire clan seeking to challenge his power had entered the forest. They were clever, ruthless, and hungry for domination. He placed a hand on Ilara's shoulder, grounding her as she felt the tension through him. "They come," he said softly, and she shivered, understanding the danger even without words. The attackers struck suddenly, emerging from the darkness like ghosts made of nightmare. Kale moved with terrifying grace, shielding Ilara, his strength a wall against the storm of claws and teeth. She felt the violence around her, the pull of the air, the weight of his energy as he fought. But then, pain. Kyle stumbled, and she felt the sharpness of it, like a storm crashing into her senses. He had been struck badly. The rhythm of his presence faltered in a way that made her heart, or what she imagined as a heart, ache. "You must survive," he whispered, his breath brushing her cheek. "You must awaken your power." Ilara's hand clenched into a fist, and something inside her stirred. A warmth, a light, a surge of energy that she had never known before. Her senses expanded, reaching into the shadows and feeling them twist and curl, bending to her will. The enemies drew closer, sensing the weakness in Kyle. But Ilara, blind and deaf though she was, felt the threads of the forest, the pulse of the earth, and the whispers of the shadows. Something deep and ancient answered her call. Kale fell to one knee, his strength waning, yet he still reached out to her. "Now, Ilara," he said, his voice trembling. Her hands glowed faintly, not with fire, but with a pure, unseen light. The shadows that had threatened them recoiled, their forms bending away as if acknowledging a new power had entered the forest. Kale's eyes met hers, and for the first time she saw more than just the world through him. She saw the depth of his soul, and he saw her not as weak or broken, but as fierce, alive, and formidable. The rival vampires retreated, sensing the shift, but the night was far from over. The forest, which had been silent but alive, now seemed to hum with anticipation, as if it too had recognized the awakening of something extraordinary. Kale sank to the ground, exhausted, and Alara knelt beside him, her hands glowing softly as she drew strength from the power that had surged within her. "You have changed," Kale said, a whisper of awe in his voice. "And I fear what comes next." Alara felt the pulse of the forest, the lingering echoes of the attackers, and something else, a faint, dark thread weaving its way toward them, hidden but aware. For the first time, she realized that her life, her senses, and even her heart had been touched by something far larger than fear or loneliness. She had stepped into a world of shadows and whispers, of power and danger, and she had not been alone. Kale reached out, taking her hand in his. "Together," he said, "whatever comes, I will be your eyes and your voice. But the forest is only the beginning." Alara nodded, feeling the truth in his words. The night stretched before them, endless and unknown, yet she did not shrink. She would face it, not as a helpless girl, but as someone who could feel, sense, and fight in ways the world had never seen. And somewhere deep in the darkness, the shadows stirred, watching, waiting. The story had only just begun.